Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Bhaskar, for graciously inviting me to speak in this cipher. Uh, After Anoop's talk, it's very difficult to match up because uh, here we don't save lives, and we have liberty of taking as much time as we want to do and give our analysis. Um, so my topic is, are you reading it right? I just want to take you guys to take a moment and tell me what you observe about this slide or the picture. Yeah, typewriter. What else? Yeah, so you might see the typewriters that we use right now, the keypad is QWERTY keyboards, and this one has Z to it. Now the QWERTY keyboard itself has a history. You know, it was basically created by Christopher Scholes in 1860s in America. And at that time, it was a mechanical one. So initially, when he created the keyboard, it was like in alphabetical order, A, B, C, D. And the problem was the keyboards, when you struck it together, it used to jam. So to slow down, he basically spread out the keywords so that the frequently used alphabets were, separated out. And that's how it came. And if you think that this is wrong, this is actually not wrong. This is basically how the Europe, adapted the keyword, because there they use Z more than Y. So that's why Z is there and Y is down. So more or less, in most of the times, it's the context in which you are looking at the data, which is more important than the data itself. I'm Nikesh Gabriel. I come from Time Inc. Time is basically a trusted voice for human stories for the last 95 years. It's based out of New York. It started with the iconic Time brand in 1920s. And right now we have more than 100 brands in both US and UK. Brands like Time, Fortune, Money. We engage nearly 50% of US adults. Every month, there are more than 150 million visitors coming to our digital properties, which is our websites, digital apps, and others. We have 2 billion video views every month, and our social footprint is 160 million plus across all the different social platforms. So in terms of data, there is no problem. We have like a lot of data. Most of the data, I work in digital area, so most of it is not personally identifiable. But in terms of data quantity, we have enough to basically make any data analysis. We also have a huge 160 million plus consumer database, which we use for our consumer insights to develop new products or to get any new research on consumer mindset. Sorry. Here in India, we are a captive for Time Inc. That basically means we work only for Time Inc. and we have different functions. I am part of Research and Analytics COE, and in that bigger team, I lead the digital analytics, modeling, and data science. So our objective is basically to provide actionable data insights and solution to brands across all the brands. Like I said, we have like 100 different brands, so it's very brands. Some of the brands are more prominent, like People and Time, which generate more revenue. So we focus more time there. So in today's session, I'll just talk about the current scenario for digital publishing and the publishing media industry as such. I'll talk about Paywall, which was how we try to monetize non-own and operated platforms that is currently there in digital media, and the content engagement part. So in terms of current scenario, for most of the publishers, including Time Inc., the problem is the print is declining, and that is the major source of revenue. 70% of our revenue comes from print. When I say print, that is, and even in terms of revenue, the major sources of revenue are subscription and advertising. So 70% of the entire thing comes from print, and the print in general is declining across. with that, the digital is increasing, but the problem is, how to monetize digitally. When you had content, when time stood for journalism, people used to buy the magazine. Now, since the entire shift or behavior in terms of people have changed, they're getting content online, but it's very difficult for, to make people pay for digital content because everyone is used to getting like free content or reading it freely. So that is the problem that we are currently facing. And in terms of content discovery earlier, even on the digital side, it was mostly through search or the recommendations or internal links that you in the site. But now there are like a lot of platforms on social where people are actually discovering content. They're not coming to your website directly, and that poses another challenge for us. So let me talk about paywall. So in terms of digital monetization, the first attempt that we did was in terms of making paywall, which was basically asking people to pay for the content. And it was not something new for timing because it started by Wall Street Journal in 2008, where they tried, and they have done it successfully, and they have a lot of subscribers. So, but even before, when you go for a paywall, the first thing that you have to understand is like who will pay for your content. It's only people who are loyal to your content, to your website, that you might expect them to pay. So the first thing you have to look is, who are your loyal visitors or people who are coming to your website. And there are multiple ways to look at it. It is people, whether they are spending more time, or are they spending, or are they reading a certain number of articles in a month. So before the launch, what we looked at was the visitor distribution in our site, where we did clustering and segmentation on our visitors, seeing like how much articles or how much content they read every month when they come to our website, and how does that spread look like. I'm sorry. And what we realized for most of the brands, because we did it for a lot of brands where we thought we could make people pay, 0.5 of visitors read more than 15 articles in a month. In terms of percentage, that looks like a very small number, but some of the brands, they get like 60 million people every month. So in terms of the total number, that looks okay for us to even go and chase it. The other question that came from that analysis was, where should we put the meter? When you say meter in paywall, it's basically whether you read 5 articles and then you say you pay for it, or whether you ask them to read 10 articles free and then you ask them to pay. So what timing went ahead was a mixture of soft and hard paywall, where we ask people to read, let's say 10 articles free, and then you have an option of registering yourself by giving your email addresses, and then you have 5 or 6 more articles to read before you actually have to pay for that month. And then you can come back again. So every month it resets, that visitor count reset or the article count resets. And it was very brand specific. So it was not like one solution for all the brands. For some brands, we realized that people are reading more gallery. So the decision has to be made whether gallery has to be made free, whether recipe content, whether video content, all those things. And there's always a trade-off because, like I said, the major source of revenue was ads, and we didn't want to sabotage that revenue, so we don't want like a lot of people not to come back and decline our already declining revenue. So in terms of like for all the brands, this is how we came up. Like for some particular brand, the height content was 15 articles. After 15 articles, you have to pay. Photo galleries and videos for some brands didn't count towards meter. For some brand, it did. In terms of pricing, we did conjoint analysis, which is like more on the survey base to see like what is the price point where we can present to the customers. And then post-launch, what we did was in terms of retention to see whether people who are coming and who are hitting the soft wall where you have to give the registration, and people who are hard paywall, whether they're coming back to our sites or not. So we saw around 10% of visitors who had hit the hard offer, they didn't come back next month. So after a couple of months after we tried, right now timing does not have a paywall, so we pulled it back. This is more, learning from, not from success, but from failure, that it might not work well. But there are, because there were other challenges in terms of ad revenue that we had to keep in mind, whether we are, so right now, we don't have a paywall, but for some of the brands like Time and People, we have premium content where people can, register themselves and read those premium content, but we don't have paywall as such. That doesn't mean that paywall is not a success. It depends on the brand. Like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, they still have their paywall, and they have, lot in lakhs. They have, at least for Wall Street Journal, because they started long back, they have more than 5 lakh customers who are paying every month for their content. The second is in terms of content discovery. So a lot of people, as you know, everyone in terms of millennial, they have moved from tablet, even desktop, to mobile. Now the content has been consumed more on mobile. So what that means for publishers is to make sure that their content is quite visible and easily readable on those devices. And this has been made difficult by some of the platforms which we call non-owned and operated, which is instant articles from Facebook, AMP, which is accelerated mobile pages from Google, and Apple News. So there people are consuming. So as a publisher, we are responsible to produce the content in those specific format and give it to Facebook, give it to Google, where they approve the content, whether this is as per their standards, and then we publish it. That means that the energy is still going from the publisher's side, but most of the content consumption is happening on other platforms, which is like Facebook, Google, as well as Apple News. The problem it poses for us is that we don't have direct interaction with the consumers. That basically means is, even for Facebook, they're trying to keep everyone in their ecosystem, not letting them go out, and that accentuates our, the decline in visitors. But at the same time, we cannot, choose to ignore this, because a lot of people are there. So in terms of reach, it's very important. But in terms of engagement and in terms of monetization, it becomes another challenge altogether. As for us, in timing, instant articles is not as big as AMP, which is accelerated mobile pages, and Apple News. So AMP, compared to 2016, we are already seeing like 700% increase in terms of content that is being viewed on AMP pages, which is 5% of overall traffic, and Apple News has 7% of news. In terms of tracking and analytics, it's fairly simple, because we have like standard set of codes which we have to implement on our instant articles as well as AMP pages. But in terms of the depth that we get, it's not as much as like what we get from our third-party vendor, like Adobe Omniture or Google Analytics. So it's fairly simple, where you get like the total number of views, total number of visitor accounts, the things like time spent, or if you, in our third-party vendor, where the depth of detail in terms of who is the author, what browser you can still get that. But in terms of all the variables that we get, we don't get it from them. In terms of monetization, again, it becomes another challenge, because Facebook and AMP is an open source, so that's not a problem. But for Apple News, how we monetize on those platforms is basically governed by them. So if we basically run our own ads, native ads, we get 100%, but if you run it through Facebook, they take a 30% cut. And even from the monetization point of view, unless you have a very close connection with your consumers or your visitors, it's very difficult to have targeted ads to them, which is currently governed by other platforms. In terms of content engagement, currently what we are looking at for content engagement most of the time is the time spent. How much time do people spend on our articles? That is basically a proxy or measure of whether your content whether people are engaged with your content or not. So the question was like, what factors contribute and can improve time spent on our articles or our content? So what we basically did is we basically broke down the entire page into multiple areas or parameters. And the hypothesis was it was not only content itself, but all of the factors around it which basically contribute to whether people engage with the content or not. So things like story type, site template, whether they are ads, at what position, whether we have more videos or images on the article. And then we ran multiple linear regression on it. So there are a lot of insights that came out of it. One was definitely like human interest stories have 25 to 30% lesser exit rate than other story types. Article with images have 2% lower exit rate, and video embed increases engagement by 14 seconds. So this is very important for us, more from the ad perspective as well, because in terms of viewability, which is currently the measure of how the ads, earlier it was just the CPM, but how much time people are actually spending with the content or in the page is also important factors what advertisers look at. So all this basically, so we also came up with, we also compared like different templates where you have articles on the first fold or images at the first fold, and we basically could figure out like which are the best templates which can work for the brand. And yeah, that's it from my side, if you have any questions.
You talked about content engagement. Did you not really look at how many people are sharing your content?
So apart from this, we also do like a lot of studies, especially on social media, as well as sharing on the website in terms of how many people are sharing it. But sharing is not a metric that basically tells like how many people have actually engaged with your content.
But that generates sales. Can generate.
It does not generate sales, because for us it is just like how many people, because we have ad inventories on our website. So whether people share it with other, it definitely increases a little bit of reach, but all the monetization happens on our side. So
In terms of getting more customers added, subscribing.
we have looked at it, but yeah, we do look at it, but that is not as important factor in terms of monetization as time spent. So. Yeah. Yeah, so we have a separate team on the retail analysis. So they basically look at all the cover pages. They also do cover testing. So we have multiple covers, and based on past covers, like which one would be more successful. So we do the cover testing analysis as well.
Offline and online.
Yes, both. It's mostly offline because it's on retail side, and that is mostly for newsstand because the cover drives our newsstand sales. So it's mostly more on offline rather than online because online we don't have cover pages. Online is just content. So, and recently we have also looked at social media data and see like what are the topics that have been trending which we can use in our cover stories. Yeah. So other than performance, the sales of the previous cover stories. And we have a lot of inbuilt research where people come to our labs and we basically test in terms of different cover stories whether they grab their attention or not. And based on that, we do that.
Do you benchmark against other competitors? I did not see any flavor of that.
Yeah, so a lot of data I had to remove it because it has to go through COP but most of it is available in ComScore. We do a lot of competitor analysis. There's a tool called ComScore which gives you, how you benchmark against your competitors on digital as well as on print. So we do that analysis in terms of.
Doing that would probably tell you that clickbait titles used by BuzzFeed.
Yeah, so BuzzFeed has been a major challenge for us, but from timing's perspective, they don't want to generate very snackable content. So in terms of the journalism itself, there is a difference of opinion, but the truth is, we are competing with people like BuzzFeed, where the amount of articles they produce every month is humongous, much more than what we do. But as a content publisher, they are more on quality rather than quantity. So yes, but BuzzFeed definitely we have that in our radar. So.
Just the previous slide, this accepted knowledge that you put an image or put a video, the engagement has to go up greatly. Were you surprised that the change with images was just 2% in exit rate?
Yeah. So in terms that is that we had done only for one brand. So it again, it's very brand specific. So something like a category for entertainment, probably an image would decrease your exit rate more. For a brand like Sports Illustrated, a video would be much more influential in terms of lowering down your exit rate. So it's again like very brand specific. So.
Whether it was through all your brands?
No, not through it. This was for one specific brand for our Timing UK magazine.
You talked about how analytics can be used to check the performance.
Right.
But then there is a field of data visualization which could actually get more interest. The data itself can create actually a lot of interest. And if you look at New York Times, there are a lot of visualizations, like interactive visualizations,
Yep.
which bring a lot of crowd. And as a data scientist, I followed that quite a bit. So are you also thinking about that in terms of...
When you say data visualization, do you mean like photos, pictures?
These are D3, these are actually interactive visualizations.
Okay.
They portray a story or tell a story through
Right.
data.
Right.
And it could be about, let's say there is a hurricane, you have
Right.
a lot of data, historical data about hurricanes.
Right.
And then, you give a message about global warming
Yeah.
through the data.
So there are a couple of them. So if you go to time.com, there are like a lot of political coverage, even during Trump's election, and during like Person of the Year or the major events. If you see, there are like a lot of interactive graphs that are there on the website, which does give us tremendous traffic when it is launched. So it's not that we don't have. Probably it might be a little less, but we do have those interactive images as well.
Managed to do any study versus slideshow versus an D3 visualization?
No, we
Have
have
you studied till now?
No, we have not done anything. Like we do compare like articles versus galleries, but we have not done in gallery slideshows versus interactive images. We have not done that yet. But it's an interesting suggestion, so we can look at it.
So I'm from NASDAQ.
Yep.
So we are working in the media monitoring domain. So we always get some of the challenges. Always there is challenges of paywall content.
Right.
So I understand you also mentioned there is a very big challenge in paywall content. So
Right.
as a Time Inc., how do you see that a challenge in terms of paywall? So are you doing any analytics to find out any, because sometimes all the users really want to get the content in a very free way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not in a paywall.
Yeah.
I understand New York Times and Wall Street Journal are doing that.
Yeah.
So, and also in specific HBR and there are lots of chemical industries, they are very particular about the paywall.
Right.
So how timing is looking into it?
So like I explained in this thing, we did look at paywall as an optimization, as a monetization strategy, but it didn't work out well for us because there's always a trade-off between whether you're okay to lose people who are not coming back to your site once they hit a hardball offer. The other thing is exclusivity. The thing why Wall Street Journal and New York Times work in that model is because they have more frequent content, which is more unique and which people, it's more like newspaper versus magazines, so they have in terms of value that they provide for people. I think in terms of perception, people have perceived more value for a newspaper content than a magazine content, which is more detailed journalism. The problem with the digital media is the same article, maybe with not the same perspective you will get for some other website. So until everyone says that we are going to make our content paid, it's difficult for certain brand to go and say that we are going to make our content completely paid. So yeah.
I think it more related to the content. So even if you see HBR, Harvard Business Review, they're still having a paywall.
Yeah.
People are going into it.
Yes.
People are really willing to pay.
Right. So it's again the value. So even if like I say, like even for time and people, for some of our brands, if you go, we still have premium content which is payable. But the entire concept of paywall, where in the articles on the website you have to pay to read those articles, it didn't work out well for us. Maybe certain specific content, exclusive interviews, exclusive content, those can be made as a paid, but not everything.
So I remember when Wall Street Journal came up with this similar approach, they had a combo as well, which is the print plus the online versus an online alone. And was there a comparative analytics like that?
Yeah. So we did the same thing. It's basically a conjoint analysis. If you see, we have like all access, where you see we have print, web, and digital, and so they were like different price points against like different offerings that we had, and we didn't compare our price with Wall Street Journal or New York Times, because their subscription model is different with us. Their frequency of content is much more than what we have. We go more in depth, whereas for them it is like more of breadth. So it was not a comparison between ours versus them, but in terms of our different product offerings, whether it is digital only, whether it is digital plus paid, whether it was print only, there was definitely a comparison that was made.
It differed brand wise.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much.